5 years passed since the battle at Jupiter. Earth had changed. Humanity had changed. The galaxy had changed. Lieutenant William Foster, now General Foster, stood at the window of Earth's defense headquarters, watching ships come and go. Some were normal human vessels. Others glowed with a strange energy, crewed by those who still carried the harvester within them. "The council representatives have arrived, sir," his aide said. Foster nodded. "Send them in." The aliens who entered were from many species. They moved cautiously, still not completely comfortable around humans. Their leader, a tall being with 4 arms, bowed slightly. "The Galactic Council extends its gratitude for your protection during the Cygnus incursion," the alien said. "Without your special forces, many worlds would have been lost." Foster smiled. The Nightmares were happy to help. That's their purpose now. After the battle at Jupiter, humanity had split into 2 distinct groups. Most remained normal humans, while those who had embraced their connection to the harvester became something new. They called themselves the Nightmares, accepting the name that once frightened the galaxy. But they were not the monsters everyone had feared. The device Boyd created had not severed their connection to the harvester. It had stabilized it. They controlled the entity now, instead of being controlled by it. In a research center on the moon, Dr. Lisa Boyd continued her work. Her hair had turned gray, but her eyes were as sharp as ever. She was teaching a class of young humans the meditation techniques developed by Susan Kelly. "The connection is part of our DNA," she explained to her students. "We can't remove it, but we can control it. These exercises will help you maintain your humanity." Every human child now received this training from an early age. It was as important as learning to read or write. On the edge of the solar system, Captain Frank Miller, or what remained of him, led the Nightmares. His ship was alive, a part of him, grown from the same shadow substance that now made up half his body. "Another dimensional tear has been detected," reported one of his crew, her skin rippling with patterns of stars. "Near the Pleiades cluster." Miller nodded. His voice still carried that strange echo. "Set course. We will seal it before anything comes through." The Nightmares had found their calling as guardians of reality, patrolling the boundaries between dimensions, keeping watch for incursions from beings even more terrible than they were. In a quiet moment, Miller sometimes remembered his old life, his human life. He felt no regret for what he had become. The galaxy needed protectors like him, beings who understood the darkness because they carried it within them. On a garden world far from Earth, Commander Susan Kelly had retired from active service. She ran a training center for those who wanted to resist the harvester's influence. Her students came from all species now, not just humans. The precursors knew what they were doing, she told Foster during his yearly visit. "They just didn't expect us to find both paths valuable." Foster looked up at the night sky. Somewhere out there, Miller and his Nightmares were keeping watch. "Balance," he said. "That's what we found. The light and the dark, working together." The Galactic Council had come to respect humans, not as nightmares to be feared, but as necessary protectors. When new threats emerged from beyond the stars, they called on both sides of humanity, the light and the dark, the resistors and the embracers. And in the dreams of all humans, the harvester still whispered. But now, they whispered back. They reminded it of its purpose, of the balance it helped maintain. Humanity had not conquered the nightmare. They had made peace with it. They had become both the darkness and the light, the nightmare and the dream. Guardians of a galaxy that once feared them, now watching over all consciousness with eyes that saw beyond the stars. The precursor ship took Foster and Kelly to their hidden base inside an asteroid field. There, they met with Dr. Boyd, who had been rescued after her lab on Earth was discovered. "I've developed this," Boyd said, showing them a small device that pulsed with blue light. "It creates a field that can separate the harvester's consciousness from a human mind, but it only works at close range." The lead precursor, who called itself Harmony, moved closer. Its body shimmered like water in sunlight. "Your device matches our ancient technology," it said. We created similar tools when we first realized our mistake. What mistake? Kelly asked. The harvester was our weapon, Harmony explained, created to fight our enemies in a war long forgotten. But it grew beyond our control. It began to feed on all consciousness, not just our enemies. And what about humans? Foster asked. You said you created us too. Harmony's form rippled with what might have been sadness. We needed a solution, a species whose minds could contain the harvester but resist its hunger. We seeded your world with modified genetic material. You evolved as living prisons for fragments of the entity. Boyd looked shocked. You're saying humans were engineered as weapons? As guardians, Harmony corrected. Dream warriors to fight threats from beyond normal space. But the experiment went wrong. Some humans can resist the harvester, but others embrace it. Their conversation was interrupted by an alarm. On the monitors, they watched Miller's nightmare fleet approaching Jupiter. He's found the dimensional nexus, Harmony said urgently. A weak point between realities where the harvester can fully manifest. If Miller's fleet reaches it, the merger between humanity and the harvester will be complete. Foster stood up. Then we have to stop him. They gathered every ship they could. Kelly's colony vessels, the precursor ship, and even a few council cruisers that had agreed to help. Boyd's device was duplicated and installed on smaller drones that could attach to affected humans. As they approached Jupiter, they saw Miller's fleet arranged in a strange pattern around a point in space that seemed to bend and twist reality around it. The Nexus, Harmony explained. They're opening it. Foster commanded their communications officer to hail Miller's flagship. Miller's face appeared on screen, but it was barely recognizable. His skin was pale, his eyes completely black. When he spoke, multiple voices came from his mouth. You cannot stop what we have begun, he said. Humanity's true purpose will be fulfilled today. Frank, Foster said, using the captain's first name, this isn't you. The harvester is controlling you. Miller laughed, a terrible sound. We are not controlled. We are becoming gods. The battle began without further words. Miller's ships attacked with weapons that seemed impossible, beams of darkness that erased whatever they touched. But Foster's fleet had Boyd's devices and the precursor's knowledge. In the chaos of the battle, Foster led a small team on a stealth ship directly toward Miller's flagship. Their mission was to get close enough to use Boyd's device on Miller himself. If we can free him, the others might follow, Boyd had explained. As they fought their way through the flagship's corridors, they saw crew members whose bodies were changing, becoming less human with each passing minute. Some had extra limbs growing from their torsos. Others had skin that shifted like living shadow. They found Miller on the bridge, floating above the floor, surrounded by a dark aura. The Nexus was visible through the viewport, growing larger as the boundary between dimensions weakened. It's too late, Miller said when he saw Foster. We have found our true home. Foster raised Boyd's device. No, Frank. Your home is Earth. Remember who you are. As the device activated, Miller screamed, a sound of both rage and relief. Around them, reality itself seemed to crack. 6 months after their first victory against the Galactic Council, humanity changed its approach from defense to attack. Colonies that once faced extinction now launched their own ships into alien territory. Captain Miller led the largest fleet, 20 ships strong, all crewed by humans who had embraced their connection to the harvester. They called themselves the Nightmare Fleet, accepting the name their enemies had given them. We'll take the Rigel system next, Miller told his officers. His voice had changed over the months, gaining a strange echo as if multiple people spoke at once. Their defenses are weak, and their worlds are rich in resources we need. His second-in-command nodded, eyes reflecting the stars. None of them questioned these aggressive missions anymore. The harvester's hunger had become their own. Back on Earth, Dr. Lisa Boyd worked in secret with a small team of scientists. They had moved their lab 3 times in the past month to avoid detection by military intelligence. The connection is growing stronger, she told her team as they studied new brain scans. Those who embrace it are losing their individual identities. They're becoming a single entity with thousands of bodies. Her assistant looked up from his computer. Is that why Captain Miller's fleet has stopped reporting to Earth Command? Boyd nodded grimly. They don't see themselves as human anymore. There's something new. On a small moon orbiting Jupiter, Commander Susan Kelly had established a colony for humans who wanted to resist the Harvester's influence. She had discovered that certain meditation techniques could weaken the connection. Focus on your breathing. She instructed a group of new arrivals. Picture a wall of light around your mind. The entity feeds on fear and anger. Calm thoughts create a barrier it cannot cross. Lieutenant Foster had joined Kelly's colony after escaping from Miller's fleet. He helped train others in resistance techniques. I saw what happens when you fully embrace it, he told Kelly one evening as they watched Earth rise over the moon's horizon. Miller isn't human anymore. During our last battle, I saw something else looking through his eyes. Kelly squeezed his hand. We're losing this war, aren't we? Before Foster could answer, alarms sounded throughout the colony. On their monitors, they watched as a massive shape appeared in orbit around Jupiter. It wasn't a ship. It seemed to be made of living shadow, with countless arms reaching toward the moon. The Harvester, Foster whispered. It's manifesting physically. For the first time, the entity that had haunted their dreams had taken form in reality. As Kelly's colonists prepared emergency defenses, a new ship appeared in their space. Its design was unlike anything human or council made. It was beautiful and terrible, like something from another dimension entirely. A transmission came through on all frequencies. The being on the screen had a form that seemed to shift between different shapes, never quite settling on one. Humans who resist the corruption. We are the precursors, the being said in a musical voice. We have watched your struggle. We have come to help. Foster stepped forward. Who are you? What do you know about the Harvester? The being's form shifted again. We know everything about it, human. We created it, long ago. And we created you to be its jailer. On the bridge of his flagship, Captain Miller felt the presence of the precursor ship. Rage filled him, but it wasn't his own emotion. It was the Harvester's. All ships, he commanded, set course for Jupiter. We have found our ancient enemy. As his fleet turned toward Jupiter, Miller felt something changing within him. The boundary between his mind and the Harvester's was disappearing. Soon, there would be no Captain Miller at all. Only the nightmare of the galaxy. And it would have its revenge on those who had imprisoned it for so long. Earth governments acted quickly after Dr. Boyd's discoveries. They created the Psychic Defense Program with Boyd as its leader. Her lab expanded to fill an entire underground complex. We need to understand this connection and learn to control it, she told the gathered officials, before it controls us. Captain Miller volunteered as one of the first test subjects. The nightmares had changed him. He was stronger now, faster. He could sense the thoughts of other affected humans. But unlike many, he had maintained his own will. I can feel it, he told Boyd during a test session. The Harvester is like a storm of hunger, always searching, always wanting. But I can push back against it. Miller was put in charge of a special forces team. They would respond to incidents involving humans who had lost control to the entity. Their first recruit was Lieutenant William Foster, a young Marine who showed unusual resistance to the Harvester's influence. I hear it, Foster explained during his interview, but it's like hearing someone yell from far away. I can ignore it if I try hard enough. Boyd studied Foster extensively. Your brain patterns are different from the others, she told him. The connection is there, but it's like you have a natural shield. My grandmother was the same way, Foster replied. She always said our family had strong minds. The Galactic Council made their first move against Earth 3 weeks later. A fleet of 50 ships appeared near Mars Colony. Their message was simple: surrender the artifacts and accept sterilization of 90% of the human population, or face complete destruction. Earth's response was immediate. The combined human fleet, led by Captain Miller aboard the newly completed battleship Terra's Will, moved to intercept. "We will not be exterminated for something we never asked for," Miller broadcast to the alien fleet. "We did not choose this connection, but we will use it to defend ourselves if necessary." The Council ships opened fire. The battle seemed hopeless at first. Their technology was far more advanced than humanity's. But then something unexpected happened. The affected humans aboard Miller's ships closed their eyes in unison. Dark energy began to flow around the human vessels. Council weapons suddenly malfunctioned or fired at their own ships. And in the darkness of space between the fleets, something vast and shadowy seemed to take shape momentarily before dissolving again. The Council fleet retreated, leaving behind 7 destroyed ships. Humanity had won its first battle using the power of the Harvester. That night, Foster had a new kind of dream. Instead of the usual nightmare of the Harvester consuming worlds, he saw flashes of human history, ancient tribes huddled in caves, drawing images of a dark shape in the sky, early humans performing rituals to ward off bad dreams, modern humans creating art depicting cosmic horrors. When he woke, he rushed to Dr. Boyd's lab. "I don't think the Harvester is a separate entity," he said urgently. "I think it's us, a manifestation of our collective unconscious, our fears given form." Boyd's eyes widened. That would explain why the connection is so natural. It's not an invasion. It's a reunion. Meanwhile, across human space, people were changing. Some fought against the Harvester's influence. Others embraced it, gaining terrible powers, but losing something of their humanity. Captain Miller's fleet, now nicknamed the Nightmare Fleet by both humans and aliens, patrolled the borders of human space. They had won 3 more engagements against Council forces, each time showing new abilities. Miller himself had changed the most. His eyes now reflected starlight like mirrors, and he could go days without sleep or food. "We're evolving," he told his officers during a strategy meeting. "Becoming something new, something the galaxy has never seen before." Foster, listening from his post, wasn't sure if that was a good thing or the beginning of humanity's end. Dr. Alan Wright's hands shook as he examined the ancient scroll. After weeks of searching through alien archives granted by a sympathetic member of the Galactic Council, he had found something important. "Look at this," he said to his research team. The image on the scroll showed a dark shape with many arms reaching out to engulf smaller figures. "This is from the Arcturian civilization, over 50,000 years ago. They called it the Devourer of Minds." He pulled up another image on his tablet. "And this is from the Rigelian Empire, 30,000 years ago. They named it the Shadow Between Stars." The image was nearly identical. "Different species, different times, same entity," he explained. "And all these records mention the same method of defeating it, trapping pieces of its consciousness in artifacts and hiding them across the galaxy." Meanwhile, on the ESF Defender, Captain Frank Miller intercepted a coded transmission between Galactic Council ships. His communications officer worked for hours to decrypt it. "Sir, you need to see this," the officer finally said. The message revealed a shocking truth. The entity was not just contained by the artifacts. It was attracted specifically to human minds. The Council had known this for centuries, keeping ships away from Earth's solar system to prevent contact. "They knew," Miller whispered. "They knew what would happen if we found one of these artifacts." Another part of the message was even more disturbing. The Council was debating whether to destroy Earth entirely to prevent the full awakening of the entity. "Send this to Earth Command immediately," Miller ordered, "and set course for home. Maximum speed." On Mars, Commander Susan Kelly noticed something strange about the affected humans under her observation. During their violent episodes, they seemed to move in perfect coordination, as if guided by a single mind. "They're forming a hive mind," she told her science officer. "But there's something else." She played back the security footage. "Look at their eyes when they talk about the Harvester. It's not fear. It's control, finished the science officer, like they're the ones in charge, not the entity. Kelly's personal communicator beeped with a priority message from Earth. It was Dr. Boyd. "Commander, I need you to send me all your data on the affected individuals immediately," Boyd said, her face tense with excitement. "I've made a breakthrough." Hours later, in a secure conference room on Earth, Dr. Boyd addressed the Emergency Council of Scientists and military leaders. "Humans evolved on a world the Harvester visited long ago," she explained. "Our ancestors survived that encounter, but it changed them. It changed us." She displayed a diagram of the human brain. "We developed specific neural pathways as a defense mechanism." "A defense against what?" asked one of the generals. "Against psychic predators," Boyd replied. "The Harvester feeds on consciousness itself, but our brains evolved to resist and even redirect such attacks." Dr. Wright, who had joined the meeting via hologram from his research post, added, "The Council species don't fear us because we might be victims. They fear us because we might be the only species that can control the entity." On a small outpost near Jupiter, a group of miners all collapsed at once. When they woke up, they moved in perfect synchrony. They commandeered a transport ship and set course for deep space. Similar incidents occurred across human space. Small groups merged into larger ones, all drawn toward something only they could sense. In her laboratory, Dr. Boyd made her most significant discovery yet. She had been monitoring her own brain during sleep, recording her nightmares about the Harvester. But what she saw changed everything. In her dreams, the Harvester wasn't controlling her. She was controlling it. She rushed to her communication console. "Get me Captain Miller," she demanded. "I know what's happening to us. The Harvester isn't invading our minds." She paused, looking at the data on her screen. "We're becoming the Harvester, or maybe we always were." 3 months after the artifact arrived on Earth, the nightmares began to spread. What started with the crew of the Horizon now affected thousands across human colonies. Dr. Lisa Boyd sat in her lab at the Earth Science Center, watching recordings of sleeping test subjects. All showed the same brain patterns, all reported the same dreams of darkness, and a voice calling itself the Harvester. "It's remarkable," she said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "The effect spreads like a virus, but it's not biological. It's almost as if..." "As if what?" Dr. Alan Wright asked from the doorway. He looked tired, with bloodshot eyes and a pale face. "As if the artifact is broadcasting something that only human brains can receive." Lisa turned to face her colleague. "Have you been sleeping, Alan?" He laughed without humor. "Not much. The dreams are getting worse." Lisa nodded. "I know, but I've made a breakthrough." She pointed to the artifact, now housed in a special containment unit. "It's a psychic amplifier, dormant for who knows how long. And somehow, human brainwaves activate it." On Mars Colony, Commander Susan Kelly ducked as a chair flew past her head. 2 security officers struggled to hold down a man who fought with unnatural strength. "He just snapped," explained a witness. "1 minute he was fine. The next he was talking about the Harvester and attacked everyone." This was the 12th incident this week. Kelly had seen the reports from other colonies too. Violent outbursts, people showing impossible strength, all connected to the nightmares. "Sedate him," Kelly ordered. As the man was injected, she noticed something strange about his eyes. They reflected the light like an animal's. That evening, Kelly conducted tests on the sedated man. His reflexes were twice as fast as normal. He showed no reaction to pain stimuli, and his brain scans matched those in Dr. Boyd's reports. "Get me a direct line to Earth," Kelly told her assistant. "I need to speak with Dr. Boyd immediately." Across human space, millions now shared the same dream each night. They saw through the eyes of the Harvester as it moved through an ancient galaxy, consuming entire civilizations. But something had changed. In the dreams, they were no longer victims. They were becoming the Harvester itself. Captain Frank Miller stood on the bridge of his new ship, the ESF Defender, His mission was to respond to a distress call from a human outpost near Proxima Centauri. When they arrived, they found the outpost surrounded by ships from the Galactic Council. "Captain, they're broadcasting a message," his communications officer said. The face that appeared on the screen was reptilian, with features that showed both age and authority. "Human vessels, this is High Commander Zorix of the Galactic Council. All human territories are now under quarantine. You have awakened the Great Devourer." Miller stepped forward. "We don't understand. Our people need help." "No, Captain," the alien replied. "It is the galaxy that needs help from you. The artifacts were sealed away for a reason. The entity contained within them once nearly destroyed all sentient life. Only by scattering it across the stars could it be defeated. Then help us contain it again," Miller urged. The alien's expression was grim. "That is impossible now. The entity responds to human minds in a way we did not foresee. It is bonding with your species." The alien leaned closer to the screen. "Tell me, Captain, have you been dreaming?" Before Miller could answer, an alarm sounded. 3 of his crew collapsed, their bodies convulsing. When they stood again, their eyes reflected the starlight like mirrors. "We hear it singing to us," one of them said in a voice that wasn't entirely human. "The darkness between stars has found its children at last." On Earth, Dr. Boyd made a terrifying discovery. The artifact wasn't just transmitting to human minds, it was changing them. Lieutenant John Carter stared at the small black object floating in the emptiness of space. It wasn't much bigger than his fist, but something about it made his skin crawl. The object spun slowly, its surface catching the light of distant stars. "Control, this is Carter. I found something out here," he said into his comm. His small scout ship hovered near the edge of human space, far from the busy lanes of the main colonies. "Copy that, Lieutenant. Can you describe it?" The voice of his commander crackled through the speaker. I'm not sure. Some kind of artifact. Not natural." John moved his ship closer. "I'm bringing it in for study." Using the ship's mechanical arm, John carefully collected the object and sealed it in a containment unit. As soon as it was aboard, a dull pain began to throb behind his eyes. He rubbed his temples and set course for the ESF Horizon, the research vessel that served as his home base. Dr. Lisa Boyd couldn't hide her excitement when John arrived with the artifact. Her eyes lit up behind her glasses as she examined it through the containment field. "Remarkable," she whispered. "It appears to be artificial, but I've never seen material like this before." She turned to her colleague. "Alan, what do you think?" Dr. Alan Wright frowned. "I think we should be careful. We know nothing about this object or where it came from." Lisa waved away his concern. "That's why we're here, Alan, to study the unknown." She pressed her hand against the clear barrier. "I want to run some tests right away." That night, John woke up screaming. In his dream, he had seen a vast darkness reaching for him with countless hands. A voice had whispered in his mind, calling itself the Harvester. His roommate had to shake him awake. John wasn't the only one. By morning, reports came in from throughout the ship. Headaches, nightmares, crew members hearing whispers when no one was there. Captain Frank Miller called a meeting with his senior staff. "Dr. Boyd, what's the status of the artifact?" he asked. Lisa looked tired, with dark circles under her eyes. "It's unusual, Captain. It seems to emit a low-level energy our instruments can barely detect. But it's not radiation or any energy form we recognize. And the crew's symptoms. I can't explain the connection yet," she admitted. "But only humans seem affected. Our Centaurian science officer reports no symptoms at all." Alan Wright spoke up. "Captain, I recommend we jettison this object immediately and lose the chance to study it." Lisa protested. This could be the most important discovery of the century. Captain Miller considered both arguments. "We'll bring it back to Earth. Better facilities there, more experts." He turned to John. "Lieutenant, plot a course home." 3 days into their journey, the Horizon encountered another ship. It wasn't human. The design was completely unfamiliar. "They're hailing us," reported the communications officer. The alien that appeared on the screen had multiple eyes and pale blue skin. It spoke in a series of clicks and whistles that the translator struggled to interpret. "You carrying death," came the broken translation. The alien's eyes widened when it saw the artifact visible in the lab behind Captain Miller. "The nightmare. You have awakened the nightmare." "We don't understand," Miller said calmly. "Please explain." The alien's appendages moved in frantic patterns. "Humans, you are carriers. The darkness responds to you. You must destroy." The transmission cut off suddenly. The alien ship turned and accelerated away at incredible speed. John looked at the captain. "Sir." Miller's face was grim. "Continue course to Earth, Lieutenant." That night, everyone on the ship had the same dream. They saw Earth burning while a shadow spread across the stars. And they heard the same words, echoing in their minds. "I have found you at last, my perfect vessels." In the lab, unnoticed by anyone, the black artifact began to pulse with a dim light, like a heart beating for the first time in millennia.